tonight offers an early glimpse into another record-breaking year, from national recognition of the Placemaking Summit to record attendance at Friendsgiving, alongside growing campaign receipts and investment performance. Our momentum is accelerating. As we begin, please join me in thanking three special groups: our musical performers, the exceptional team at the Old Capitol Inn, and our very own CFM event manager, Sandy Quinn. Tonight, this event is made possible through the generous support of our exclusive sponsor, Huntington Bank. Brad Maley, a longstanding member of the Foundation's Finance Committee and a trusted contributor across multiple committees, has been instrumental in the Foundation's stewardship. Huntington not only sponsors this event, but they also hold several of our key operational accounts at Huntington. And these are particularly high volume accounts for us. They make things possible such as the Book Festival, Folk Festival, Wells Fest, the parade, and due to their strong local presence, we can literally hop next door to get excellent service and to queue up a payment for that item that you forgot to send to Ken on his deadline. While the name may be new, Brad and his team and his commitment to Mississippi remains deeply rooted, and we're grateful for Huntington and Brad's leadership, their partnership, and their belief in our mission at the Foundation. I'd like to ask Brad to come forward to say a few words.
Thank you, Dave. I just want to say, wow. I mean, I'm humbled to be here, be a part of this great organization. All that each of you in this room do to make our communities where we live, work, and serve better. It makes me proud. It gives me chill bumps. To our whole team over here at Community Foundation, thank you for what you do. Y'all are excellent, helping drive success and growth. So we at Huntington, we're very proud to be a part of this event. We're a very small part of this event, but we're very proud to be a part of it. And I think you will find that although we are now Huntington, prior Cadence, you will find that our commitment to the community is going to either be equal to or even greater than what we've done in the past. So I know I see several of my partners in the room tonight. I look forward to working with each of you over this next year. You will continue to see the Cadence name until about June, and then the signs are going to start changing in June to Huntington. So get ready, a lot of fun, a lot to come. And again, I'm humbled to be here tonight. Thank you so much.
Brad and his colleagues will be available during the reception. And if you're interested in partnering with a community-focused institution like Huntington, we're going to be happy to connect you personally, because Brad's just been an incredible volunteer on all these various committees for us. We're so pleased with our connection. Tonight celebrates the power of philanthropy to shape Mississippi's future. We bring together fund holders and donors and partners to recognize the transformative impact of giving across Central and Southwest Mississippi. You'll hear updates on CFM's grants, investments, and initiatives, along with an economic outlook from Atlanta Consulting Group. Together, we'll explore how strategic philanthropy drives enduring change for good forever. To ensure a seamless program, our speakers will follow this order: Ken Wyant, Director of Finance; Michael Butkus, partner of ACG; Sophie McNeil-Wolf, Director of Communications and Insights; Melody Moody-Thordis, Director of Strategic Impact; and then Jane Alexander, our CEO and President. I'll begin with a few acknowledgments and a brief overview of the work of the Foundation, because some of you have brought guests and we want to make sure you leave understanding what the Foundation does. Before we do that though, CFM operates with a dedicated staff, but our strategic direction is guided by an exceptional board of trustees. I invite all of our trustees and current committee members to stand so that we can recognize you for your service and leadership. We also honor several trustees concluding their terms, leaders who have guided the Foundation through pivotal growth, From complex gift acceptance, like timber tracts, to expanding endowed funds. As the saying goes, or the Hotel California song, you can check out, but you can never truly leave. And so while they're moving off of their board service, they're going to remain very close to us, I'm sure. For our guests joining us tonight, we're going to continue to outline CFM's work and how you can engage with us and amplify our mission. If you don't know, CFM serves 22 counties of central and southwest Mississippi. And every single county of Mississippi is covered by a foundation. But here, where we are footprinted tonight, I dream of the day when, in the years ahead, every single county in our service footprint has an endowed scholarship serving students for their county, a dedicated relief fund like helping neighbors and our friends to respond to community crisis from a water crisis or a tornado, and at least one nonprofit in every single county who has their endowment at the foundation. We also serve and partner with nonprofits. We manage their endowments, enabling them to focus on their mission, raising money rather than being stuck in the office handling long-term assets. From Mississippi Public Broadcasting to Operation Shoestring and the state's premier symphony, we provide financial stewardship that ensures long-term sustainability. Board members and leaders and volunteers of these incredible causes are best deployed advancing the mission and the visibility, crafting and creating fundraising strategies, not managing asset allocation. That is what CFM and ACG is doing. We help these nonprofits invest better so they can spend their time out in the community attending to important programming. We have community partners as well. We serve as the physical sponsor for major community initiatives like House St. Patrick's Day Parade and the Book Fest, and they rely on us for critical infrastructure, fund administration, donation processing, compliance, vendor payments, and tax reporting. This allows organizers to focus entirely on delivering exceptional performances and experiences. Increasingly, though, nonprofits are consolidating their accounts with us. They're strengthening their cash management and their long-term building reserves. They're streamlining their operation, and they're getting these incredible and infectious staff people and their committed volunteers back on the mission and out making the case for their causes. And this simplifies their work and gets them out of the office. We also, most of you know us from serving individuals and families. More than 150 families and donors have donor-advised funds and designated funds with us. We simplify and organize and amplify charitable giving for these families and individuals. The structure that we offer provides privacy, efficiency, and clarity. Instead of managing dozens of receipts across multiple organizations, donors benefit from a single streamlined record, especially valuable in an audit situation. When individuals and families open a DAF with CFM, otherwise known as a donor advised fund, they're leaving an incredible gift to their heirs. It's a roadmap of what causes their parents care about. The foundation is set up to empower these children or these successor advisors to carry forward that legacy. Recently, I had the opportunity to sit with Jane and one of our newest fund holders, who's chosen the foundation for her bequest. What makes this donor's story particularly compelling is how thoughtfully she structured her gift, supporting 4 or 5 causes initially, and then after a number of years, entrusting her fund's stewardship and grant activity to the CFM Grants Committee. It reflects a powerful understanding that while many of us feel called to support specific causes today, we can't imagine what the future needs of our community are going to be. This recent visit with this donor showed a person seeking to do good forever, true to our mission. For those of you who are new to this event or who are starting to put your toe in the water of philanthropy, you may be still trying to discern where to give, and we're here for you as well. we offer various entry points for emerging philanthropists. The Community Trust Fund, our competitive grant-making fund, our Helping Friends and Neighbors, our Rapid Response Fund for Community Crisis, and even the CFM Endowment, which sustains the foundation's long-term impact. Now, this summer, we're going to be launching a revised grant catalog, and we'll expand the digital resources to further support emerging philanthropists during our website redesign. So stay tuned. So enough from me. Thanks for being here. And now let's dial in for an engaging summary of what has happened, where we're headed, and how bright the future is for Central and Southwest Mississippi. Please welcome Ken Wyatt, Director of Finance, followed by Michael Butkus of ACG.
Just so you know, Jay, you mentioned my deadline. If for those of you that know, it's Tuesday at noon to be paid by Thursday. If you know, you know. Okay. I want to be able to share with you a little bit of the finances, some of the numbers of the Community Foundation for Mississippi. This right here, this little slide is something you would see in your annual report from us. And it shows kind of, you know, the grants, the contributions to DAFs and how much our assets were. This was as of March of 25. Well, going forward, I wanted you to see something for this year. This graph right here represents the contributions made to the Community Foundation for 11 months this year. It represents about $15 million. The main thing I want you to see by looking at this graph is that it's pretty diverse. We are not concentrated in any one type of fund. And just give you definitions on a couple of the funds, like an agency fund. That would be like a not-for-profit wanting to give their money to the Community Foundation to invest, and it would be for the benefit of that organization. So in that case, 12.9% of our contributions came from agency-type funds. We have about 45 to 50 of those. We have over 300 funds in total. And so if you look at the others, there's donor-advised funds. We have about 65 of those. Designated funds are to specific organizations. We have about 90 of those. Field of interest funds are a particular type of thing like education, animals, healthcare. We have about 50 to 55 of those. And then fiscal sponsorships, those are like the book festival and the parade. We have about 20 of those. So the next slide is grants. This is money going out. And so we are actually a couple of different pieces. We're grants and what we call program expenses. Grants are monies that are given to nonprofit organizations by a fund. And so there's about 8 million represented in that first 11 months. You can see again, it's diverse. It's not concentrated in one spot. The second thing is program expenses, same thing. They're not in one area. So we have very, very varied programs that we help do. So like a designated fund would be something like the planetarium. Field of interest, the Kellogg Foundation gives to educational type things. That would be in that realm. The fiscal sponsorships, again, are the book festival. We did the National Folk Festival this year too, so that was in there. So there are some pictures of some of those things. On the top left, that's the book festival. On the top right is the planetarium. And then we have the parade in the two lower quadrants there. And then Wells Fest, which they help out musicians. And so that fund has been getting up and running the last year too. So they're a field of interest type fund. So this is a graph I want to be able to explain a little bit. Endowed versus non-endowed funds. Does anybody know what an endowment means? It's kind of an accounting type word. An endowment means that you give a principal amount and it can never be spent. So let's say you give $100,000. What you can spend out of endowment is the earnings on it. And so we'll do some of the earnings, like 4.5% a year can be spent from an endowed fund. If you have an endowed fund, it goes on forever. And so as you can see, since the very beginning of time for the Community Foundation in 95, that little blue bar is endowed funds. And you can see as of February of 26, it's almost $55 million at the Community Foundation. The green bar is non-endowed funds where you could spend all of it if you had it. But I will say this, in that green bar, there are some what we call board designated endowments. The donor didn't restrict it, but our board did. And so that represents another 12 million. So if you take that, you've almost got 66 million in endowment type funds and 38 million in the non-endowed. So we're becoming more endowed, which is good for the long term because that keeps us going on forever. The final slide I want you to see is total assets. We are growing and we're growing fast. If you look in March of 2005, there was about 13.3 million in assets at the Community Foundation. 10 years later, it went to about 38 million. This is kind of around where Jane happened. Jane was somewhere right around that area where it was 38 million. And you can see since Jane's been here, it's gone from 38 million to almost 105 million. We've gone up almost 15 million this year. So to all let you know, we're a good investment. So.
Good transition to the investment guy. Good evening, I'm Michael Butkus from ACG. A couple months ago, Jay and my partner Kurt told me to come down here and tell you all some good news. And I'll tell you, the world was a little different then when I accepted that invitation. But we're gonna have to go through some things here and I'll give you an update on who we are and what we do. Big picture, partner at ACG. I grew up on a research team, sit on our investment committee, but most of my time is spent with folks like yourself. I work with a number of our mission-based and faith-based clients, as well as our secondary and higher education clients. So almost all of the assets that I manage personally for our firm are very similar to you, right? And whether or not they're endowed, I think most of the donors are giving those dollars so that they grow. And so we can really relate to the way in which you all invest, and hopefully our goal is usually to out-earn the fundraising team, but it sounds like that's a difficult bar here. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our team. I'm just the face today, and we have a very strong team of now up to 25 people based in Atlanta and Lexington, Kentucky. We've been around since 1985 and now have about 15 billion of assets under advisement. We're an employee-owned firm. I think that's important for y'all because we're not going anywhere. But big picture, I've got to transition into the world we live in today. So this tells you a little bit about our personalities. This is how we like to start a lot of our presentations. And for those that have checked their accounts this month, we've had a lot of volatility and things have changed. But if you think back to about a year ago, I was giving a very similar talk at the Catholic Foundation of North Georgia. It was March 25. Liberation Day hadn't occurred. It was the worst start to the stock market of a presidency ever. And if you think about where we are today, I think everyone would look back and say, what was I worried about? We had a drawdown last year from peak to trough of 18.9%. If you were to turn on CNBC or open up your phone right now, they would probably make you think that it's much greater than that, when in fact the peak to trough drawdown is only 7.6%. But the point of this slide is not to be too funny, but to make the point that diversification is incredibly important. And when we get into the portfolio here, I think you'll see that. So big picture, the Middle East and the energy crisis is what we're worried about, what we're all experiencing. But what we'd like to point out here is if we look at history as our guide, and Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And you were to go through the data here at the bottom, I know that's really small and that's not by design. You can walk up or I'll show it to you afterwards. Is that if you go back to major crises over history, going back to, I think as far back as 1940 here, and you look at returns following these geopolitical and military events, on average, on a 3-year basis later, annualized, the market's up 9.1%, positive 86% of the time. It's not very long. If you go to 5 years, it's up to 9.6%, up 95% of the time. And then when you're thinking about the long-term nature and the long duration of these assets here, going out to 10 years, it's up, I very rarely can say this number, it's up 100% of the time. Right, that's history, not a guarantee. And the median return there is 10.5%. So big picture, what we like to remind clients in times like these when you get worried is to think long-term. So for those of you that have been to the gas pump recently, you've experienced the shock we've had here. Oil and gas prices have certainly shot up relative to the last few years. I think at one point today, I had to check this before I sat down because it's moving so swiftly, is we're at $104 a barrel. After hours, though, there's been some news in terms of maybe some peace talks, and we're down to under $100 a barrel. Gas prices have shot up over 35%. And if you look at the long-term effects, should we see oil prices stay high? This chart on the bottom left looks at the Strait of Hormuz and the various price scenarios, but more importantly, what's that do to the economy? And you can see here in the bottom right, de-escalation leads to -4 bips on GDP, moderate, protracted, it gets worse and worse, and also certainly affects headline inflation. So the R word, everyone likes to start thinking about this because when you look at previous oil shocks and gasoline prices, and before we know it here, we're going to be driving around going on summer vacation, that typically and historically has led to some pretty big shocks to the economic system. If you look at the Atlanta GDP Now estimates, they're predicting some pretty sharp drops. That is a daily estimate, so that can come back up very quickly as well. The good news here is if you look in the bottom right, and there is good news relative to all of the shocks we're seeing and all of the problems in the world, S&P, whether you look at EPS growth or earnings per share, we continue to see incredible growth options within the market. Something else in focus for those of you in the financial services industry has been private markets, particularly private credit, which we do have in our portfolio here. Those private credit lenders, led by BDCs in the top left and also more broadly private credit, are big lenders to the software industry. And so with the advent of AI and maybe some disruption there and the growth of private credit, we've seen some pretty considerable redemption requests in the top right. Now, when we talk to the underlying companies, when we talk to the actual funds themselves, they're not seeing as many worries at this point in time. A lot of this is just investors themselves getting worried about the market and hitting the eject button. You are seeing it reflected in the publicly traded stock prices of these various funds: Blue Owl, Ares, KKR, Apollo, Blackstone, and TPG. But what we really take a dive into is the underlying credit metrics at the bottom right. And so what we see there is that credit quality itself still looks relatively healthy. In particular here, we're invested with a firm named Golub. You'll note they're nowhere on this page, which is good, because they tend to be higher quality in the way in which they invest. So when you think about our underlying client base and the clients we work with, we're not here to hit triples. That's not our goal. This team doesn't say, Michael, we need to grow 20% in our portfolio next year. Because if you take those types of swings, you could strike out. And so we tend to invest with higher quality managers who have really solid returns, but maybe not the highest returns, because if you have those high returns, you might have some more volatility in your portfolio. So what's that look like in practice? You'll note there are no returns here today. If you want to talk about returns, we can do that as well. What I really want you to note, going back to our cartoon here, is how many pieces, slices of this pie there are. There are 3 pools here at the foundation, and you'll note that this portfolio is set up to be an endowment style portfolio. What's that mean? It is set up with a long duration, with lots of duration, lots of diversification, We have a blend of active and passive. We have blends of value and growth. We have small cap, we have large cap, and we have international and domestic. As a reminder, a year ago, no one was sitting in this room talking about international equities, yet that diversification and having international equity exposure in this portfolio is what led to some of the great performance. As I mentioned earlier, we do have some private investments in this portfolio. We have Golub Private Credit and Hamilton Lane Private Equity. What's a little bit different about this portfolio, maybe versus the typical endowment, think Harvard, Yale, some of those endowments, is that number is not 50%, right? And there's a reason for that, because of some of the volatility you can experience. We do believe in having all these various pieces of the pie. We have another pool, the equity pool, that is also an endowment style, but it's very focused, 100% focused on equities. And so the diversification you see here is that it's roughly 50% large cap. And so when I point that out, it's this Dodge & Cox, who's a very value-based manager with value style. So think more energy and financials. Whereas Loomis Sayles Growth has more technology and communication services. But we don't put all our eggs in just the active basket. We have the S&P 500 index. As you go from, I guess, right to left, clockwise here, you see at the bottom part of the page, and these funds are all in the other portfolio as well, the balance pool. We have a mix of Columbia, who's a small cap value manager, mixed with a small cap growth manager. So two different pieces of the pie who do two very different things. We also have mid cap, and then we have about 20% of our portfolio in international. If I were to come in this room 2 years ago and say, we're going to put 20% of your portfolio in international equities, we all like to drive looking in the rearview mirror and look at past returns. You would have said, why are we doing that? Everyone wanted S&P 500, S&P 500. We call that home country bias, or portfolio patriotism is the other term, right? Everyone says that's what I want in my portfolio, but there are certain cycles over time where that's going to outperform. Now, I'm not smart enough to tell you exactly when, but I'll tell you that we're going to maintain that diversification so that when the market shifts, we have exposure. The least exciting is the fixed income pool, but for you investors that are out there maybe looking for income, right, and stability within your portfolio, we also offer this. This is a nice mix of duration. It is mostly active with a little bit of Vanguard short-term bond fund in here. The reason we have diversification in this pool, a lot of people say, well, why don't you just put it all in a cheap bond pool and just let them manage it? Well, if you were to go look right now, in December of this year, there's a higher probability of a rate hike than a rate cut. You heard me. And so we have to be prepared for those types of market scenarios by having a nice mix of longer duration bonds with Loomis, Sayles, and Harbor, mixed with the shorter duration bonds, which could protect during that environment. We also have a little bit of high yield exposure in there with Schenkman. That fund invests in under 2-year duration high yield bonds, so junk bonds. But in general, the statistics are very strong that if your bond is issued as a 5, 7, 10-year bond and you make it to only 2 years left, you probably aren't going to run into any credit issues. And so statistically, that's been a great diversifier for us. So the takeaway today is to really remind yourself that when you're sitting in this room, you're making considerations about giving, who are you giving your money to? That's the question we get all the time. And that's why we have our biopics up here, and we want you to know how many people there are that are thinking about this day in and day out. But also remind you that each piece of the pie here serves a purpose. Some are more offensive, some are more defensive, to really grow these assets over long periods of time and then protect on the downside. I love talking about this stuff. Jay's going to pull me off the stage here in a minute. So if anybody wants to ask questions or has any follow-up on the charts, I'd love to speak with you afterwards. Thank you for having me.
We're moving to the short people version of this program. So we've heard a lot about numbers so far. The grants, investments, the growth. But what does it actually look like in place? And of course, you got the storyteller up here. So of course, I'm going to tell you some stories. And especially, what does this look like here in Jackson? And for us at the Community Foundation for Mississippi, investing in place means helping move ideas into action. It means connecting people who might not otherwise be in the same room. And sometimes it means stepping into something and getting it started because there's not necessarily a clear path forward. Over the past year, we've seen that play out in a couple different ways. And one example is Jackson Rising. This wasn't just a series of conversations. It brought together public leaders, private partners, institutions, and residents around the same table to focus on some of the city's biggest challenges: housing, infrastructure, safety, public spaces, economic opportunity. And CFM helped support this work by allowing the Imagine a Greater Jackson Fund as the avenue to raise funds. And this also was a great time for us to work alongside other partners as a convener and a connector for workshops. And what's been most encouraging is what's happened during and after those conversations. There's now a report guiding next steps. Groups are continuing to meet and take ownership of specific issues. The Unhoused Task Force, for example, has been a great success when SNAP benefits were cut in November. They, along with a lot of the other Jackson Rising groups, actually work together to collaborate quickly and to stand as one and to help those in need in our city. And this group also just gathered at our office for a full day working session last week. So that work continues. And that's what investing in place looks like. It doesn't end when the meeting is over. It continues as people stay at the table and keep doing the work. And here's just a little bit of an example of what that looked like. You can also see it in physical spaces too. Right next to where we are tonight at Margaret Crigler Park is beginning to take shape. A new public green space. It'll sit alongside the two Mississippi museums with room for gathering, play, and programming. And that park becomes part of something even bigger, the Museum Trail, which is continuing to expand and connect more downtown. And in fact, just steps from here, kind of right below on the backside here, you're actually going to see some expansion soon. And it's going to extend with this next phase behind the old Capitol Museum and Howland Mounds towards Court Street, which you can kind of see a little bit of this in rendering form. Projects like these don't happen overnight, and they don't happen without people who are willing to invest in the long-term future of a place. In this case, both the Museum Trail expansion and Crigler Park are being supported in part by the John and Lucy Shackelford Fund, a legacy gift created by people who believe deeply in Mississippi and what our community could become. Because of their generosity, we're able to say yes to projects like this, to help move them forward, to create ripple effects that will be felt not just for today, but for years to come. And just as importantly, we're able to keep telling their story through that work that continues in their name. That's what investing in place can look like at its best. It's not just about what we see today, it's about what we make possible for the future, giving forward. And sometimes investing in place means helping something exist before it can stand on its own. This past year, CFM served as a fiscal sponsor for the National Folk Festival, helping Jackson's first year get off the ground. And that role is about incubation, providing the structure, the support needed to bring something new to life. So when we talk about impact, we're not just talking about dollars. We're talking about ideas becoming action, partnerships turning into progress, and places across our community beginning to feel more connected, more active, and more full of possibility. And the truth is, none of that happens alone. It takes a lot of people, most of you in this room. It happens because of the people who choose to invest in these ideas, these projects, and these places. And so instead of just hearing it from me, I'd love for you to hear directly from some of the people I've had the privilege of working with to tell their story, who help make this kind of impact possible every day. So I've got a short little video for you.
I was kind of kicking around the idea of what the Film Society was going to be. I didn't even know what it was going to be. I hadn't set in any one direction. And I remember going into the Community Foundation's office and talking about these ideas, and really folks there helping me think through what it could be. It also allows me to do the work that I think I'm suited to do, which is not bookkeeping, right? Which is not kind of the day-to-day tasks of managing a nonprofit. I would like to grow to that where we can have a staff that does that on our own. But I think this relationship, this partnership, lets me focus on doing events and providing experiences for the community. And so just the day-to-day work of existing as a nonprofit, it just makes operations so much more manageable.
So around 2019, we were looking for money. We were looking for anything that might help us stay solvent, and searching through files in the office, and they found some paperwork that said Community Foundation for Mississippi on it. Called Community Foundation and found that our money that we had left in there for almost a decade, over $100,000, had been growing slowly, and it was sort of a new breath of life for us. One, funds to keep our doors open, but two, knowing that we already had an established relationship with Community Foundation was really helpful. And so since then, we've been able to put more money into the Community Foundation. We've leveraged their support in raising money and managing our money well. They've been a huge help in terms of helping out with paperwork, keeping our money secure. You could put it, I guess, with any other financial investment company, but then you don't have the access to other nonprofits in the area. You don't have that sort of sage advice from people who do nothing but help manage finances of nonprofits.
The thing that we have to think about is that we have to take care of our community today, absolutely. But we have to think about 5 years, 10 years, where do we want to be in 20 years? The future is evolving and we have to evolve with it. And if we don't support these arts and if we lose these kind of things, look at the children that are not going to have that. We have to have that kind of support moving onward.
When I go out to pitch people to fund these things, whether it's the parade or Wells Fest Cares, it is an incredible asset to say, and if you decide to join with us and to become a part of this and help fund this, you will get all of the tax ramifications of giving your money to the Community Foundation for Mississippi. And it's a whole different conversation of me saying, would you give me $10,000 to put on the St. Patty's Parade versus me saying, would you give $10,000 to the Community Foundation and this fund, this nonprofit fund that puts on this parade and the benefits go to Children's of Mississippi. That is a much easier pitch than would you give me some money. People who have wealth are comfortable giving to the Community Foundation. It is something that they're familiar with. It's this third leg of the stool that gives comfort and ease and assurance to a donor. And you're going to have this incredible team of people to work with, which makes it joyful to pick up the phone and to call over there and say, you know, I need some advice, or how do you do this, or can I do this, or how should we do this, or do you know anybody who knows anything about this project or idea that I'm working on?
We wanted to be a part of the change. I mean, that's what we both grew up feeling. So we're committed to Mississippi. We just enjoy sharing some of the resources that we're lucky to have been able to grow.
We are supporting this fund that is local. You are familiar with most of the organizations that we are supporting. I just think Mississippi and Jackson needs all the help we can get. And so because we're born and raised in the state, we wanted to do something with a local organization.
It's easier for us to spend our time talking about our list. And if we're going to add a charity or two or three, we can add it to the list without having to do anything but communicate with y'all what we want to do. And we know that it's going to be taken care of. There's never been an incident where what we were requesting from our donor-advised fund has not been honored. So our time is more quality time in knowing that our partner, the Community Foundation, is there to do the work. There's so much that this organization, this Community Foundation for Mississippi, can do for the general public. You know, your $100 by itself is not as strong as 10 people doing $100 and having $1,000 that could make a difference in something. So the word community is such an important piece of what this organization's all about. It's the community. It's the community we live in. It's the community we have worked in, and the community we feel a part of. That's why the Community Foundation, for me and for Susan, I think this is where we needed to be.
Okay, hi. Great video. My name is Melody Moody Thordis, and I'm the Director of Strategic Impact and Programs, where I manage our grants and our programs, and we focus on strategy and impact. So as you can see, we do our work in partnership with people who care about making meaningful change in our communities. So you heard Ken speak about our donor-directed dollars, and you heard about some of the funds that we do in partnership with generous individuals like you guys across the state. So in addition to our donor-directed grants, we also award grants through an open process where you can apply for financial support to accomplish those goals. So this is what you might think of when you typically think of nonprofits applying for grants. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So I want to talk about thoughtfulness, because as thoughtful as our donors are, we try to approach our work to distribute funds to nonprofits across Central and Southwest Mississippi very thoughtfully. So our unrestricted dollars is what gives us the opportunity to do that. It's important to us as stewards to deploy this funding in a way that empowers nonprofits to make that change, while of course ensuring that CFM as a steward of that money is making measurable, maximum, and sustainable long-term impact. So in order to accomplish this, and I'll talk a little bit about this, we use a multifaceted strategy to award what we call our competitive grants. So as you can see, our service area stretches across Central and Southwest Mississippi and covers 22 counties. So that is twice the size of New Jersey. We've started saying that because it's quite compelling to cover that size and what that looks like in different ways. So as we have expanded our reach, our approach to grant making and programming has expanded, and we try to recognize that the needs of small towns and rural communities look different than the needs faced by Jackson and other metro areas that we serve. So while we still center our work in the capital city, we have deployed a strategy that offers grants and programs, large and small, across this entire service area you can see here in the blue. And we try to work in true partnership. We don't want to just give a grant. We want to build a relationship. We want to work in partnership. And we want to recognize that we want to equip communities to see the change that they want to see that to fruition, and to help in whatever ways we can to help them see that vision. So one of the ways that we do this is by bringing community representatives together once a year at something we call the Mississippi Rural Placemaking Summit. So we started this and we currently host this. This event brings together nonprofits, community leaders, elected officials, and different people from across the state working in downtown community revitalization. So we are able to convene these leaders and connect them to resources that they can use, again, to make changes that they want to see in their communities. Last year, we hosted this event with our partners in Macomb, and this past year, we did that in partnership with leaders in Yazoo City. So at every summit, you can think of this kind of like a conference, right? But it's no ordinary conference. We try to focus on not only bringing people together around best practices for building community, but we really ensure that each of our sessions result in tangible, achievable practices that communities can take home and implement their vision in their communities. And I think that's something that really makes this strategy different, is that we're not just here to talk about the big picture. We want people to really feel like they can make change, and that the Community Foundation can be the convener for those resources. So as we have deployed this new rural lens, when we look at the needs of small towns and these communities, we want to not just gather together, we want to give back. So you'll see here, this is one of the sessions that we had at the last Rural Placemaking Summit, where we partnered with an amazing nonprofit, Extra Table, and attendees packed these bags of beans and rice as a donation to the Yazoo City local food pantry. So as our footprint has expanded, we have really tried to meet this strategically for Mississippi, using approaches that work in Jackson and being a meaningful resource and partner for those across Central and Southwest Mississippi. And of course, the core of the work that we do in our communities and making an impact is centered around our grant making. So every year we offer grants across our 22 counties that often serve as the only funding source to help these nonprofits see their ideas come to fruition. So these projects range from summer education programs to skill building to even transforming parking lots into food distribution centers. So our community impact grants are really at the core of our competitive grant strategy. And this past year, I'm happy to say, have resulted in a grant to every county that we serve. CFM also works closely to gain an understanding of the needs of our service area. And so we look for patterns, we look for gaps, we look for barriers, right? So something that we saw in small towns was a pattern of nonprofits and municipalities receiving larger grants from other sources that required a match, right? But as we dug deeper, we saw that these small towns, in many cases, were unable to meet that match, which resulted in communities having to return funds to the state or to the federal level. And so in response to seeing this pattern, CFM created something we call our Rural Leveraging Matching Grant that now allows entities across our service area to apply for a portion of that needed match so that they can, again, continue to see what they are investing in brought to fruition in part by CFM. Another approach we take is by making a commitment to lift up nonprofits of all sizes. So we have really made a point to ensure that we are supporting nonprofits anywhere from taking their first fundraising course to when they are ready to start or grow an endowment for forever funding. So we offer capacity building grants, and we also this past year partnered with experts in the field to offer a year-long cohort, kind of a deep dive fundraising course for nonprofits in our area who are seeing great success but are looking to grow and scale. And so because we are interested in the longevity of nonprofits, we want to make sure that nonprofits can start to thrive, can grow, and can scale. One thing I just wanted to mention is this year our strategy garnered national attention as it was featured in the Chronicle of Philanthropy, which is a respected publication that serves as a key voice in philanthropy. It's been around for over 35 years. CFM's efforts were recognized for our innovative approach to serving urban areas, small towns, and rural communities. I wanted to share with you quickly a quote from one of our grantees. And they said, "The Community Foundation opens doors. They help to remove barriers that stand in the way of a great idea. They help to make sure that if there's a dream on the inside of a community leader, it can manifest. CFM has helped make our work possible, connecting us to resources and making us feel like true collaborators and partners together." And I just want to say it is because of each of you here that we're able to make that impact. And it is in partnership with you that we continue to expand this work. So by deploying our unrestricted funds, such as our Community Trust Fund, Helping Friends and Neighbors, our Shackelford Fund, which you've heard about tonight, we also think about our commitment for good, focusing on partnerships and meaningful outcomes, and how we can do the most good with the limited amount of money for the largest number of cities and counties in Central and Southwest Mississippi. So we're able to make grants and we're able to make community support because we have donors that want to make an impact like all of you here. Now, we can do so much more. So I want to just let you know, as we enter this fiscal year, you're going to see more and more opportunities to support this work. You're going to see more and more opportunities to invest in these funds and help us build an even bigger impact in the years to come. So I want to invite you to join us as we scale our growth and our impact year over year. We're going to be talking about this next year when we see you and all that we have been able to accomplish because of you 1 year from today. So again, it is because you guys are for Mississippi that we can be for good, and because you believe in long-term meaningful change forever and for generations to come. Thank you guys for all that you invest in the work that we do, and know that we are striving every day to make meaningful change and be stewards of your generosity. To close us out, I would like to welcome our President and CEO, Jane Alexander.
So I promise to be quick because I am the last person between you and food and drink outside. You see why I love my job. I have the world's best job. I have the world's best team. I like to say that while I guess theoretically they work for me, I really work for them because it's about empowering this group and this board and all of you to do wonderful work for our state and for our communities. None of us would be here if we didn't believe in A, the power of giving, B, the power of giving back, and C, the power of really locating that in the place you live and making a commitment to the place that we all live and care about. Nobody else is going to do it if we don't do it. So mostly I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to all of our speakers. I want to say thank you to all of our partners in the room, our donors, certainly our sponsor. Thank you, Brad, for being here. I really think that it's worth saying that to kind of go back to something that Melody was saying at the end, when people say, what is it that you do? Our tagline is for Mississippi, for good, forever. We do a lot of things, as you can see from this slide. It's hard to distill that down to one sentence to say, well, this is what the Community Foundation does. But the through line is that we are the connector. And I think that's the other message we want all of you to have is we don't just connect donors with things that matter, because donors can sometimes do that on their own. The bigger picture is, can we connect all of the types of good work that's happening to folks who want to fund it, folks who can do the work, folks who need to know about the work, and we need to amplify those stories. So if y'all will think about this word amplification, this will be kind of our theme for the next year, is how can we aggregate more assets to the Community Foundation, which will amplify their impact in the community because we are able to make these connections. And it's because of y'all that we can do that. So thank y'all for being here tonight. And please go and listen to some music and have something to drink and something to eat, and we will see you outside.